Welcome again, everybody, to the fifth webinar in this series in your program to grow your small business by focusing on your ideal customer. Today's webinar, we're going to dig deeper into building your story so that you can create a very compelling picture. Once again, I encourage you to turn off distractions. Don't try to multitask. Give yourself the gift of focusing on your business for these next 40 minutes. I encourage you to take lots of notes and to do this, as I say, slightly differently, following my ABC format. A for action category, B for blinding flashes of the obvious and great aha moments, and C for, gosh, I need more clarity about that. What are your questions? Write down your questions and be sure to have them ready for our question and answer session next Tuesday. You've heard me say it before, but I really do know that when you ask a question, it's helpful for everybody. So don't hold back from asking. You'll be serving not only yourself, but indeed the whole group. Okay, let's get underway. What I'm talking about today in terms of telling stories is sometimes mistaken for persuasion or motivation. But in essence, what we want the stories we tell in our marketing to do for our ideal customer is help them to make the decision they want to make, the decision aligned with their values, their aspirations and their goals, a decision that will move them away from the things they don't want happening. So it's not really about persuasion or even motivation. It's about helping them know as clearly as possible whether this is the right choice for them, then guiding them to make the decision. Making a decision is actually quite hard for us humans. Our brains are very easily confused by choice. Research has shown that the more choice we have at the moment of decision making, the harder it is for us to decide. That wonderful picture of Nelson Mandela at the moment of reconciliation. Nelson, or should I say Mandela, didn't cloud the decision about reconciliation with all the issues that would follow when reconciliation was achieved. He stayed clear on a choice between reconcile or don't reconcile, knowing that many more decisions would follow, but each one had to be taken based on the highest aspiration and values of humanity, based on his big why. That's what made it possible for him to do what he did. So imagine what it would be like if you had the power to write words and motivate, influence and persuade people to do anything you wanted and to help them make those really important decisions and choices in their lives. So I'm focusing today on stories. From ancient times to current day, stories continue to hold readers and listeners spellbound. And there's nothing better than a good story. It works like magic. You can give people information and motivate them using stories without having the barriers that would normally come up. So this is a seldom used copywriting technique that works absolutely wonders. For your bottom line. So, social media and new technologies have had a major influence in recent years. And the influence is that we can know much more about people than ever before. What this has created is a need, a human need and desire for going back to fundamentals like authenticity, participation, and engagement. Special effects and funny or clever ads are fine, but they are expensive and not good use of money for a micro or small business, because often they do not touch the core of experience. There is so much bandwidth out there. I'm not sure if this is a good analogy, being a digital immigrant as I am, but what I mean is there's so much choice that to get noticed, a small or micro business must go deep and get close and personal. So however you calculate it, clever or smart is not going to get you very good return on investment when you're small. Yes, when you're big, but not when you're small. So when micro and small businesses identify and develop a core story, they create and display authentic meaning and purpose that others can believe, participate with and share. And this is the basis for connecting at the personal level. And a small business core story is seldom replicated by any other business. So it's very particular and specific. So your story, their story, why the focus on stories? Well, in spite of all the excitement generated through new technologies and social media, the human brain has been a little slower on the evolutionary trajectory than the technology. Our brains still respond to content by looking for the story. They try to make sense out of the experience. No matter what the technology, the meaning starts in the brain. So the success rests on the resonance, authenticity and richness created by the storyteller. Stories are authentic human experiences. They leapfrog the technology and bring us to the core of experience, as all good storytellers know. And there are many psychological reasons why stories are so powerful, and I'll go into a few of those in some depth, but basically they connect us to a larger self and a universal truth. They are about connection and collaboration. Through stories, we share passion, sadness, hardships, joys, meaning and purpose. They're how we think and make meaning of life. They're how we justify our decisions. Think about it when you last made a decision that you, how did you talk to yourself about the decision? Notice that you told yourself a story about it. Stories provide order. Humans seek certainty, and narrative structure is very familiar. We've learned it from childhood, and it is in all cultures. To the human brain, imagined experiences are processed the same as real experiences. So stories create genuine emotions. They create presence, a sense of being somewhere, and they create behavioral responses. Finally, stories are pathways to engaging our right brain and triggering our imagination. By engaging our imagination, we become participants in the narrative. We can step out of our own shoes, see differently, and increase our empathy for others. And the next step is we can then increase empathy for ourselves. So through imagination, we tap into creativity that is the foundation of innovation, self-discovery, and change. And I'll come back to that a little bit later in the webinar. So, stories engage all parts of the brain. Stories are the brain's way of organizing information, and they sit in the limbic brain, not the neocortex, which is the new part of the brain that handles facts and figures and language. Stories actually sit in the limbic brain. In other words, they sit in the oldest part of our brain. They are how we rise above the noise. The story we tell helps us as small business owners rise above the noise. Stories package information for rapid comprehension by engaging the brain at all levels, the intuitive, emotional, rational, and somatic. One of the main reasons that traditional marketing approaches don't work, actually true for most businesses, even big businesses these days, but it is particularly important and pertinent for micro and small business because you simply don't have the resource to throw at big campaigns. So one of the main reasons is that the social web has created a new consumer psychology. Consumers expect you to earn their attention, not to interrupt them for it. Old marketing techniques started with interrupt to get attention. People now want to see communications that are timely, interactive, personal, and above all, honest. Think about it. Think about some of the TV campaigns on some of our big banks are running at the moment, ANZ or phone companies, Vodafone. They are trying to be very personal. Can't vouch for their honesty. Whatever, whether that's true or not, you must communicate in a way that treats your audience with respect and delivers value before the sale. So a story can communicate who you are and inspire people at a higher level with your passion, purpose, and commitment to the customer's experience. It's not about selling, it's about engaging. Engaging people moves pre-customers or prospects, as we call them, to brand advocates or your advocates. So a well-done story communicates who you are, packages information for rapid comprehension, engages your prospects, inspires them to take action, and moves prospects to advocates. And the ones who are particularly affected by the stories are those who, what we call the early majority. So in marketing terms, we have the early adopters, the ones who are leading out front. They're the ones queuing up for all the Apple products, whenever they are released. And then following the early adopters, the early majority. Now you need your early majority because you can sell to your early adopters easily, but you need your early majority and you need the testimonials or case studies of your early adopters to tell their stories so that the early majority will jump on board with your programs, with who you are, with what you do, and how you do it. Okay, so I want to give you an example. Gillian is a client of mine. That's Gillian Ray, that's her photo. She came to me when she was running her wedding planner business, but it was simply not fulfilling and satisfying. She'd built it from scratch, but it just wasn't what she wanted. The work we did uncovered her passion, and so she started a new business called Run 21, helping people get off the couch and run their first half marathon. Gillian's own story is her key marketing tool, and she tells it like it is. Now, it's easy to see how her story works to engage her ideal clients because her story is very, very relevant. And it may not be so clear or easy for you to connect the dots and to find the relevance between your story and your ideal clients. You may have to dig deep to find the story you can tell, and you may not immediately see how you can apply this to your marketing. But we will get to that. Don't worry about that. Be Nelson Mandela. Just do what needs to be done today. I can help you with the next step. The first thing is to find your story. So if you haven't already written your own story, your backstory, I have created another exercise for you, which I hope will help you with it. But here's how Gillian speaks about herself on her website. I started running less than 3 years ago. I can still remember the day I first managed to run 3 kilometres, 3 whole kilometres, without stopping to walk or collapsing in a heap on the ground. It was a huge victory for me, and I felt like texting everyone I knew to tell them my exciting news. Since then, I ran a bunch of half marathons, a couple of full marathons, and even staggered triumphantly across the finish line of my first ultramarathon a few months ago. I came 4th to last. It was a long day, Okay, I may be a little crazy, but certainly I'm no superhuman athlete. And she goes on. So when it comes to helping you prepare for your first half marathon, I know exactly how you feel every step of the way. And I remember what it was like being the slowest person and feeling like everyone is waiting for you to catch up. I know how hard it is to convince your body that you're going for a run when it'd much rather be sleeping. I get your total confusion at knowing what and when to eat to maximise the results of your training. I'm totally on board with gasping and puffing your way slowly up the hills while your lungs adjust to the challenge. And I also know how freaking awesome it feels to accomplish your first goal and cross that finish line for the first time ever. Now, in the next slide, you can listen to how Gillian does this herself, how she speaks about it.
When I was a kid, I hated exercise. You know how in every school there's always that one kid who will do absolutely anything to get out of PE class? In my school, I was that kid. And my reasons for wanting to avoid PE weren't just because I was terrible at sport, although obviously if I'd actually been, I might have improved somewhat. No, my reasons for wanting to get out of PE class had more to do with the uniform. In particular, the shorts. Do you remember those hideous short shorts they used to make us wear in the 80s? The ones with the slit that went right up the side? The slit that went so far up all the boys could see your baggy granny undies with all the little hearts and stuff. No, that was just me. Every time I tried to pull my undies up so they wouldn't show, and every time by the end of the lesson they'd have worked their way down again to puff out the bottom of my shorts. Every time. Other kids would laugh and make fun of me. Didn't take me long to decide that if this was exercise, then exercise wasn't for me. It's funny when you think about it, how such a small thing can have such a big impact on the way your life turns out. You see, over the years, that belief stuck with me, and I kept on avoiding all forms of exercise, even when I got old enough to buy my own undies. By my late 20s, I realised that I was headed for disaster. I could barely walk up the hill to the letterbox to get the mail without getting out of breath. I needed to do something. So in desperation, I signed up for a 5-week fitness boot camp. But I already knew it was going to be a disaster. In fact, I told the trainer as much. I thought it was only fair to let him know what he was getting himself in for. I hated exercise. I was terrible at sport. I wasn't cut out to be athletic. Who told you? He said. Who told you you're not athletic? I did. And when did you decide this? When I was about 10. Do you always let 10-year-olds make your life decisions for you? I had to admit my trainer was right. Actually, it turns out he was right about a lot of things. See, after that 5 weeks was up, I signed up for another 5 weeks. And then another. I was really starting to see a bit of a difference to my health. I'd lost quite a bit of weight, I gained a bit of muscle, and most importantly, I'd even developed the confidence to wear short shorts again. It was time, I decided. I was ready. I was going to run a marathon. But not just any old marathon, oh no. I decided I was going to run a marathon on the Great Wall of China. I know what you're thinking. You think I'm nuts. So did all my friends and family. That's how I knew I'd made the right decision. The Great Wall Marathon is widely regarded as one of the toughest courses in the world. In 30-degree sweltering heat, you climb up and over a really steep section of the wall where there are no fewer than 5,164 steps, some of them up to your knees. That's roughly equal to climbing the Sky Tower 4 times. And it's just the first 10K of the course. See, after you come down off the wall, you spend 20K running through rural streets and paddocks where every kid in China is lined up along the side of the road waiting to give you a high five on the way past. And once you're completely and utterly exhausted, the final 10K is a repeat of the first 10K in reverse. All 5,164 steps of it. Sounds like fun, right? finishing that marathon was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. The heat was intense. The ground was uneven. The dust made it difficult to breathe. At 32 kilometres, I sat crumpled unceremoniously on the steps of one of mankind's oldest and greatest artefacts, fighting back the tears because I was just so exhausted and so far out of my comfort zone. I couldn't face the trip back up and over the wall. What am I even doing here? I thought to myself. I'm not a marathon runner. My 10-year-old self was right. Who was I even kidding? But I wasn't going to let myself be dictated to by a 10-year-old, even one as intelligent and downright attractive as me. So what if I wore my undies on the outside when I was a kid? Do you know who else wears their undies on the outside? Right then, I decided that my superhero power for the day was going to be stair climbing. I picked myself up, brushed myself off, and headed back towards the massive stone staircase winding up into the distance.
So, I think Gillian's story is, and she tells it on her website, and she tells lots and lots of different stories. Her business, Run 21, helps other people who think they can't run, who think they, who made a decision long ago that they weren't fit or they weren't athletic and it wasn't for them, do something that they've always wanted to do. So stories have this primal form of communication. They have always been. They're timeless links to ancient traditions, legends, archetypes, myths, and symbols, and they connect us to a larger self and to universal truths. And when we connect to a universal truth, we can see ourselves in that universal truth rather than stuck in our own lives. So stories are about collaboration and connection. They transcend generations, they engage us through emotion, and they connect us to others. Through stories, we share passions, sadness, hardships, and joys. We share meaning and purpose. Stories are the common ground that allows people to communicate, overcome defences, and overcome differences. Stories allow us to understand ourselves better and to find our commonality with others. Stories are how we think. They're how we make meaning of life. Call them schemas or scripts or cognitive maps or mental models, metaphors or narratives. Stories are how we explain how things work. They're how we make our decisions. They're how we justify our decisions. They're how we persuade others. They're how we understand our place in the world, create our own identities, and define and teach social values. Stories provide order. Humans seek certainty, and narrative structure is familiar. It's predictable and comforting. So within the context of the story arc, the story frame, we can handle intense emotions because we know that resolution follows the conflict. That's the structure. That's the story frame. We can experience, therefore, with a safety net. How this works in a marketing sense is that at the fundamental level we understand that most stories end well. There is a resolution. Therefore, we can allow ourselves to connect with the story, with the pain, with the thing we don't want happening, knowing it will all end well. We are therefore more willing to go on that journey. We become willing to buy the product or thing that is offered, the service that's offered, because at this primal level, we trust that it's going to work out well. Really want you to get that this is happening at a non-thinking level. It's wired into us as humans. Because stories are indeed how we are wired. They take place in the imagination. To the human brain, imagined experiences are processed the same as real experiences. They've done lots of experiments to prove this. Stories create genuine emotion. They create presence, that sense of being somewhere, and they create behavioural responses. It's the behavioural responses that we really, really want. The emotion based on, the behavioural response based on the emotion. So stories are the pathway to engaging our right brain and triggering our imagination. Yeah? By engaging the imagination, we become participants in the narrative. We can therefore allow ourselves to be the ones with the successful outcome in our imagination. That enables us to see differently and increase our empathy for others, of course, but also for ourselves. Finally, through imagination, we tap into creativity. That's the foundation of innovation and self-discovery and change. And as marketers, we want people to do something they have not done before. We want them to change, even if only a little. We want them to take a risk. Stories are one way, and probably the most powerful way, to do this. So I'm encouraging you to tell your story. Okay, I want to come back to this why, this question of why. This idea that telling people the reason why you are doing something is one of the most powerful influences in human behavior. Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, he talks about an experiment by this Harvard social psychologist, Alan Langer, that concluded people like to have a reason for what they do. And the experiment went something like this. It consisted of people waiting in line to use a library copy machine and then having experimenters asked to get ahead in the line, to jump the queue. The first excuse used was, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush?" Now this request, coupled with the reason, "I'm in a rush," was successful 94% of the time. However, when the experimenter made a request only, without the reason, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine?" this request was only granted 60% of the time, a significant drop. Okay, now for the really interesting bit. It may seem like the difference between those two requests was the additional information of "because I'm in a rush," a valid reason. But actually that's not just the case. Because in a third experiment, the experimenter asks, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies?" No reason given, no reason mentioned, no new information presented, just the words "because." Now this time, 93% apparently of the people simply said yes, simply due to the word "because." And it didn't even matter that there was no actual reason given. So telling people why you're doing something increases the chance of them doing what you want them to do by at least 50%. So we buy the why, not the what you do. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. If you haven't already watched the Simon Sinek videos I sent you links to, I do encourage you to make the time to do that. He explains this really simply, really clearly, and very powerfully. So what you want to fix in the world is, just as in Gillian's case, usually determined by something that happened to you that you didn't like. Yeah? Your purpose. How you actually go about fixing the situation is determined by who you are at your core. Some people are adventurers and love to travel, others are farmers, they love to nurture and support. Some love to play on the surface and not be so serious all the time, and others just like to dive into the depths. And it's all wonderful. When you weave what you care about, who you really are, and what you are great and best at doing, your natural talents, when you weave those things together, you get a really authentic story that is something unique, specific to you, and non-replicable. So no one can copy that. And that's critical for a small business trying to differentiate themselves in the market. No one can replicate that because it's authentic to you and specific to you. A lot of people tell me, they're looking for their passion. And the word passion comes from the Latin pati, to suffer. And originally passion meant pain, as in the passion of Christ. But knowing what has pained you in the past, it becomes much easier to track your passions. Even if you feel no interest in anything particular, you really are not sure what it is that you're interested in, odds are that you have suffered in some way, shape or form. No matter how, it doesn't matter how unimportant you think it was at the time. At the time, Gillian's talking about, the gym shorts she had to wear. It doesn't matter what it is. We're going to find those things. Because healers in all cultures know that healing the self from any kind of pain or torment is the groundwork for healing others, for creating a positive change in the world. And it is the foundation of your life's work. In your case, it's the foundation of your big why and your purpose in your business. So this exercise that I'm creating for you this week is about is about a painful experience or sequence of experiences, and I'm writing about that in order to create the most profound connection with your ideal customer. So your task is really to write your backstory. You can use Gillian's example, if you like, to help you. But I want the story about why you do what you do. Now, if you work for a larger organization, if you are a franchisee or an owner of your own business within a larger structure, what the question that you're looking for is, why are you selling or operating within this organization and not its competitors? Why are you here within this organization? That's where you will find your clarity. I don't know if you know the work of Joseph Campbell. We used his work a lot to teach actors at the School of Performing and Screen Arts. Joseph's work on mythology and uncovering the core story of humanity, that is what he called the hero's journey, has had a profound impact on all of us. The core notion of the hero's journey is that we are living our normal lives and then we receive a call to a journey, which usually we refuse, and some refuse forever. But some of us eventually are compelled to go on the journey, and in that journey we are forced to confront ourselves. We are wounded or challenged or in pain, but we are helped and we learn and we become a new person. But the journey isn't over until we return back home to share our new selves, to share what we've learned with the community. And in my experience, it is in this coming home that you are able to connect with your ideal customer. It is in the sharing that we know what we have now to offer that we didn't have before. Had we not gone on the journey, we would never have had the wealth of knowledge that we have now. We would never have had the compassion for our ideal customers and the experience we do now to help them with the issue that you help them with. This is our offering back to the community. So, your wounds or your pain or your challenges were things that you had and have learned to overcome. And in order to overcome them, you were likely really motivated to get good at certain things and develop certain skills. If it's a struggle that you had, then there's a good chance that others have had it, and that means there's likely a need, and that there are others who want to pay you for helping them overcome this. And people are often surprised by how much they love the idea of helping people who are currently struggling just as they used to. So wounds aren't a magic bullet, but they are a surprisingly accurate doorway into an authentic connection with your ideal client. Another way of looking at it is, what if the whole purpose of growing up was to become the adult whose support you were most needing when you were younger and had that challenge? What if your whole purpose of your business was to help people who had a challenge similar to yours? So before I even formally had some of this understanding in my head, I began to see that there was a deep connection between an ideal client and my nature as a person. And I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, basically my ideal client is someone just like me. And that's not a crazy response. It makes perfect sense. I keep seeing in my own business how our lives end up preparing us to bring our gifts to our ideal customers. Gifts that no one else could bring. They are specific to you. There are certain things we're good at and certain things we aren't good at. And that's a relief in a way, because the world's full of lots of needs and opportunities, but there's only one you. We're not built to solve every problem in the world, but there is something we are prepped for, something we can give that no one else can. And I think that's got a lot to do with why you're here today. I can help you. So in your program, there is an exercise which is called Create a Compelling Picture, and it's a PDF, and it's a writable PDF, and in the outside frame you fill in the most pertinent information from your target market exercise. In the middle circle you put information that you got from doing your flat tire story, and right in the middle you put things that are like the values and qualities of your ideal customer. So I really encourage you to either do it in the writable PDF or take that frame and take a large sheet of paper and draw the circles on that one, and then find pictures and images to help you get really clear and tell the story of your ideal client. And the other exercise is to write your backstory, and I'm going to give you a technique to do that will, I hope, make it easier. If it doesn't, please let me know. But I have found it a useful exercise, and I'll be uploading that into the program very shortly. So I hope you took lots of notes or lots of questions, and maybe you had some BFOs during this webinar. Thanks for your time. Been a pleasure delivering it. And my special thanks to Gillian for allowing me to show her video. And I'll talk to you all, or see you all, on the Q&A on Tuesday. Thanks. Bye-bye for now. Go well. Dig deep.